everybody. Thank you very much for the introduction. I suppose my longer title for this is Avoiding the Bad Hire, My Experiences After Hiring an Idiot. I think it's something for me, it's actually more of a personal story because it's something that goes back about over 10 years ago, but actually I think it was like everybody here, we all have our own businesses, we have our day-to-day challenges that we face, but it's the one time I think in the whole, I'd say the last 15 years, I really started to question myself as to, was there something fundamentally wrong with my judgment? And it really, just for those of you who don't know me and what we do, we have a software company, Terminal 4. I say we, I suppose I mean me and our team. I try to just spread it out so it doesn't all feel like big pressure on my shoulders. We provide software for universities. We're about 70 people now. We sell all around the world, mainly the English-speaking world, about 157 universities, big names. But back over 10 years ago, much smaller, based in Baggot Street. And one of the key things we wanted to do is, I suppose as entrepreneurs and people who found our business, we sort of have to do everything at the beginning. And one of the roles I took on myself was, I suppose, CEO and sales director. So it was really all on my own shoulders. So what we wanted to do was try and hire a good, and there's this word, if any of you have sort of venture capital investment in, it's sort of like, it's the heavy hitter salesperson is the sort of word that's thrown out onto the board table. And so every time I hear that now, it's like, oh my God, I sort of like cringe. So what we wanted to do was bring in a really good commercial director, someone who could take that off my shoulder. But it was the one time, I think, in my business life that I really questioned myself. We went through the whole process, the whole interview process. We used good interview techniques. We checked references. I sat there in the interviews myself and connected with the guy. And for obvious reasons, I'm not going to mention names or anything like that. You'll be looking up on LinkedIn to try and find who the guy is. But it ended up that we came out of the interview process, which I think comprised like 2 or 3 interviews, a presentation, and so on. And we were really, really buzzed about the hire. It was going to really actually change our business. It was going to really give us a lot more scope for growth. So you can sort of imagine where this started to go, is that like the person actually started off very well, but then it behind the scenes, what I didn't realize was that they were actually, I suppose, intentionally not being fraudulent, but they were sort of like building a facade around what they were doing to make it look like they were doing a lot better than they were. And within a sort of a 3 to 4 month period, the cracks started to really emerge. And what really came out was that actually there was really very little substance behind what they were doing. They were giving lots of messages that they were doing certain activities, and I was going out for sales meetings, so I could see certain stuff, but I couldn't see a lot. Anyway, to cut out sort of a long story short, the longer version can be had over pints maybe someday. But for me, they ended up being a really sort of negative impact on the business because they actually built up this sort of facade, as I said, of actually doing a good job, but actually behind the scenes the pipeline was shallow. They actually were winding up and annoying a lot of the senior management team, but they were sort of, because they were so buzzed and part of the recruitment process, they didn't want to sort of go, hey, we made a mistake with this person and we hired the wrong person. So for me, it ended up being a bit of a disaster. Luckily, we didn't have to go down the legal route or anything like that. We were able to, given that they were only in about 4 or 5 months, we were able to exit them from the business, which is the lovely polite term, I think, for like basically kicking them out the door, because I'd love to have really physically done that, because I think that the impact, the personal impact that it had on me was actually much deeper than, and these are sort of personal stories, and this is why I wanted to bring this to today, because I think there was some practical things I really learned out of this personal story. It really impacted me because I was there at the interviews. I had a connection with the person on the other side of the table. I could really connect with the work that he had done before. I had gone through a due diligence process in my head as to like that this person was the right person. I was so buzzed by him. I was really excited to have him on board. So when it all sort of hit a wall and went really badly wrong, it really actually hit me personally, because I started to say, well, you know, we're all here, we're all entrepreneurs. I think we probably all believe that we've got really pretty good judges of characters, and you hear phrases, someone you hire should be someone who you'd like to have a pint with or sit on an airplane beside on a flight or whatever, all that sort of stuff. So I really felt that I'd completely misjudged the person. What it also did was, because there was a shock of sort of having this horrible hire, that it then meant our ability to then go back out to the market and try and find somebody else, it ended up actually delaying us, because we held off for about a year and a half because we were so unsure as to why we'd hired the wrong person. So that's the story from my own personal point of view. So I'm sort of from an engineering type background. It's software engineering, so people like Aidan and the real engineers in the audience would really question that. But for me, it's all about like, well, what can I learn from this? And it's like Frankie said, you have to, and I think Willie Walsh at your conference said, it's all about learning from the experiences, having the failures and the mistakes. And my sort of motto is, look, it's okay to make a mistake, Piero, but don't make it a second time, because then that's your own fault. So for me, it was like, what do I do about this? And one of the things that I really took out of this, and hopefully it's something practical, a tool that you can take away today, is we, with some help, outside help, we actually brought in a whole area of psychometric testing into our recruitment process. Just a quick hands in the air. How many of you have used psychometric testing in your businesses? So it's probably about half, maybe. Okay. So one of the things that we found was, well, how do I get inside the head of the crazy people out there who want to try and ruin my business, but want to grab as much money and want to sort of like create this amazing LinkedIn CV, but are just like completely mental and crazy, but you can't, they're so good, and particularly salespeople, they're so good that you just can't tell whether they're good or crazy. Maybe there's a balance in between, and maybe that's what a good salesperson is. So we looked at psychometric testing, and without going, and this isn't a sales pitch for any particular company, but what we did is we used a particular type of psychometric testing from a crowd called Thomas International. We also brought in one. We've now brought in a VP of sales in the US, and we used a specific set of psychometric testing for salespeople, which is very good. But what I found with the psychometric testing, and I'm not qualified in any way like Tony, but so I'm sure Tony might question some of the things I might say, but for me, what it is, for any of you who haven't used it, it's an online questionnaire, but they're really sneaky type questions, but you don't know they're sneaky, because what ends up happening is that they ask you a question about, like, well, how do you act in these sort of type situations and so on, but you can't try and play the system. That if they're all interlinked so much that if you try and sort of pick things, it doesn't really, they don't quite mesh together, and I'll talk about that. What ends up happening is you give the company you're working with the role, and what they'll do is there's like a graph. In their case, they have 4 different categories. So for example, like, do you need them to have a lot of influence? Do you need them to be very detail orientated, and so on? And they come up with a graph for the particular role. And then what you do is you run these tests with all your candidates. We run them now before they come in for their second interview. And so what's really quite interesting about all of this, though, is that straight away it tells you not about their skills, it tells you not about what they've done or anything like that. It's all the soft stuff. It's you're getting inside their head in a really interesting way. And for us, it's really been an amazing way for us to overcome and avoid the problems that we had that long time ago. So just as a sort of, to put it into context, that how well this has worked for us actually in the last 2 weeks. We were going through, we're hiring a head of customer service, so if you know anyone who's good out there, please, I'll collect CVs or LinkedIn names from people later on. But one of the things, we were very buzzed about a particular potential new hire. Everyone, we'd done, I think it's 2 rounds. We were just about to go into the second round of interview, but the first interviews, what we had done was that we got her to meet a number of people within the office, and everyone was quite excited about that she'd be the right person for the role. So we did the psychometric testing. It was a disaster. Firstly, she tried to manipulate the answers. So we got a call from the psychologist in the company that does the psychometric testing and said, something's gone wrong here. You know, what ends up happening is, because the questions are so interlinked, if you try and manipulate them, it actually comes up with, like, I suppose in sort of, I don't know how it works in a psychologist's office, but maybe like a big red bell goes off or a big siren or something like that. But anyway, he got on the phone and said, actually, she's trying to manipulate the test. So we sort of nicely went back and said, look, there's a technical error. Any chance would you mind answering the questions again? Anyway, came back horrific, the results. They came back different, actually, to the first time. From all the great sales pitch and all the great examples, it turns out that then she wasn't, firstly, she seemed to be about to be fired from her current role for actually being competent, which was not a good thing, and hadn't come out even when we talked to her, we'd actually started talking to her references. What also had happened is that she wasn't a team player, she wasn't able to influence, and she wasn't a self-starter. And for me, it was a really good vindication of the changes that we put in place after hiring a really poor person many years ago. It was a really good vindication that this will solve, that at least it's a way of auditing whether the people who are going to join your team are the right people. So for me, this is just, I know it's quite a practical thing to take away. I would certainly highly recommend you look at psychometric testing as part of your recruitment process, because for me it actually had quite a big impact. Probably it held back our growth probably by a year because of that. And if I can give that to you as something to look into, it might avoid you having the same impact. And the one line I saw it actually yesterday evening in a magazine, but I think many of you have heard it before. You know, a bad hire in a large organization, an issue, you know, in a startup or in a small growing company, it can be absolutely fatal. So I hope you can take that away today and use that as in your toolkit, and I hope it benefits your businesses, and the best of luck. Thank you very much.